Let's get into 2A.org. You've been a part of a debate, which I caught a portion of, but it is part of an overall larger debate, and that is who is welcome in the gun community. So unless Trevor had another specific question to that, I wanted to jump into that topic.
I just want to learn a little more about 2A.org, what its mission is, and just ultimately, what do you guys do at the 2A.org so that our listeners know?
Yeah, and it is confusing. It's especially the way it's written there. It's like 2AO.org. So it's Second Amendment organization, and the website is 2AO.org. So I just want to make sure people have that, especially on the radio, if you want to go check this out. 2AO.org is a gun rights advocacy organization. It's a 501c3 that was founded in 2014. When it was founded, it originally focused on being a counter to the movement where gun-free zones, right? After Sandy Hook, gun-free zones in corporate America became a big deal. And a guy who owned and ran a restaurant in Northern Virginia decided he was going to put out a banner that said, you know what, if you have a concealed carry permit, come to my bar or restaurant, and I'm going to give you 10% off. And that was where this started. And it got really popular. There was a lot of national media, a lot of excitement in the gun community. And boom, Second Amendment organization was born as a entity to, give a logo and give a name and give some guidance to mostly locally owned small businesses that wanted to demonstrate their support for responsible citizens, responsible gun owners, even responsible concealed carry. Bring your gun in, you're welcome here. This is not a gun-free zone. But it wasn't done as a very aggressive, like, if you're not with us, you're against us. It was just like, just like you might say, a lot of places now they have like a rainbow flag or something hanging up, right? We're LGBTQ friendly. So this was the gun rights, we're friendly to you guys, come on in. And, we know you're here to get your hair done or you're here to get your brakes done or whatever. We're not going to get all gunny, but if you are a gun person, know that we support your rights. And at one point, there were 25,000 businesses across the country that were signed up to support it. It grew very, very, very fast. It got very, very popular. The big email list, all that stuff. Yeah. And there was some shadiness in terms of the way some of the other gun community organizations, particularly the NRA, interacted with them and some others in the wake of Sandy Hook. And basically, Marion Hammer, one of people who've been following the NRA reform movement, she's a fan favorite. She wrote an article that trashed Second Amendment organization and several other orgs, and basically came out and said, well, if you're supporting organizations like this, we don't know who these people are. They've only been around for a year. You better be supporting the NRA because we've been around for 140 years and we're here to help you. And unfortunately, when they originally developed 2AO, they piggybacked on a lot of volunteers that also were affiliated with the NRA. And basically what happened, the politics of it was that the volunteers, the state reps, the local organizers, the people doing a lot of the Facebook stuff, basically got told, by their channels through the NRA, like, yeah, we don't want you supporting any of these new startup after Sandy Hook orgs. You need to get people to be donating to the NRA and the NRA only. And they listened. So it, like overnight, like 75% of the volunteers they had stopped supporting the org. And it really took the wind out of their sails, as you can imagine. Yeah. They kind of went dormant for a few years. And then somewhere around 2017, they reached out to me and said, Rob, we noticed that you're not really, tied to any of these orgs. We have a 501c3 in good standing that's very aligned with a lot of your messaging. Would you be interested in joining with us and sort of using our name and our platform, but also developing it for your message? And I told them no, the last thing I want to do is take over a thing, but I would love to get to know you guys better and maybe join your board and work through the process of seeing, because not everybody loves Rob, right? You may love Rob, but if Rob comes out and says open carry activism is an embarrassment to the gun community, I need to know that you're not going to bail the first time somebody sends you a note and says, I'm a traitor to the Second Amendment, right? I never said open carry should be illegal. I just said it's not the best way to convince somebody who isn't already into guns that gun owners are responsible and chill, right? So if you're, we spent about a year courting one another at some very high real talk levels. Like, what about this? Did you know I got into this controversy? Did you know this happened? And at the end of the day, they did put me on the board, and they did make me the executive vice president and basically hand me the keyboard and say, we support your message. And until we don't support your message, you have the microphone at 2AO. And the board has been incredibly supportive and very true to their word. And we have reestablished 2AO is not just to support local businesses, but really to support all gun owners who want to be advocates, but don't necessarily want to, be on CNN, right? Or join the NRA board of directors, or whatever. Just be a responsible gun owner. That's the best way to be a good gun rights advocate. And then we supply what I think are reasonable and rational talking points or conversation points or ways that you can engage with people at the workplace, at the coffee shop, in the stands at your kids' sporting events, that maybe are pro-gun control or even anti-gun, and just like, well, here's something to think about, or here's some things the gun community does you might not know about, and here's the way gun owners are responsible and do work against negative outcomes involving guns, suicide, crime, accidents, whatever. And it's been fun. It's been great to have the support of a real organization like that, and not just be Rob ranting on Facebook. And it's also been cool to see the response that we've gotten to our messaging and our website, gunrights.info, where we've spelled out 60 plus position statements. Here's how we feel about NFA. Here's how we feel about suppressor. Here's how we feel about national reciprocity. Because some of these things are very nuanced. It's not as easy as saying shall not be infringed, not in 2021.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple things to say. A tree can live to be hundreds of years old, but it eventually still falls. The NRA being around for 140 years doesn't mean it's still viable or doing right. Also, I've seen some of the fervor that's been created by the opinions that you post on Facebook, and that's not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but you make a good stance, and it's great that 2AO is behind you on a lot of those topics, because even though a lot of the individuals that follow you don't like to hear what you say, it's important that they hear it and that other people feel that way.
I appreciate you saying that. There is a lot of pushback. People have to remember, 80 plus % of the firearms owning community is completely silent on gun issues, right? They don't get involved. And one of the reasons they don't get involved is they don't want to be associated with some of that fringe, noisy element, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even the NRA, and I'm working to help reform the NRA. I'm friends with a lot of people over there. Save the Second does a lot of that work. And that's the group I work with on that reform movement, restructuring as the NRA gets out from under their troubles, hopefully. At best, the NRA has never had more than like 6% of American gun owners as members. Well, why? Well, one of the reasons why is kind of crap messaging, right? Like, just if it's all fear mongering and fundraising, and then 15 years ago they tied themselves to the Republican Party, and NRA TV, when it finally died, was more like ultra conservative news talk than it was gun rights. Mm-hmm. Even recently, as a board meeting, the most recent members meeting, Wayne LaPierre got up and gave a very impassioned speech, as he does, and he talked about 7 or 8 things that were the NRA's agenda, and this is my personal agenda for America moving forward. And he listed these 7 or 8 things. One of them mentioned firearms. And it was something generic like, ensure the future of our Second Amendment rights for all Americans. And it was like, where was national reciprocity? Where was Hearing Protection Act? Where was regaining lost rights? Where was getting rid of the issue over pistol braces, right? Where was protecting imports? Where were all of the things that you might find, making sure we don't have universal background checks, all the things that gun owners who are politically aware really care about and are on our agenda. And luckily it was the members meeting, so I got my turn at the podium and pointed it out, and I said, look, I get it. You guys have done great things. A lot of you board members have been on the board for decades, and you can celebrate McDonald, and you can celebrate Heller, and you can celebrate the concealed carry revolution. But I just heard 8 points from the podium from the leader guy that, and crime, reducing crime in American streets, that's not an NRA talking point, guys. Sorry, let's focus on guns. So 2AO focuses on guns, and as far as who gets to be in the gun community, anybody that wants to be a gun owner, anybody that wants to focus on guns, and yes, even the people who say, I don't want an AR. maybe there's a conversation, think about this, to be had with the gun owner who says, I don't know why anybody needs to own an AR. How about the gun owner that says, is it really a problem if we have a 31 round mag limit? Is it really a problem if we have a 21-year-old to purchase a gun age restriction, right? I don't agree with those things. Gunrights.info will tell you how 2AO feels about it. We don't agree with those things, but we can't pretend that that's not a huge percentage of American gun owners who have no problem with background checks, don't really get the magazine capacity for her thing. And honestly, we're going to find I don't think you could find, let's say there's 80 million gun owners in the country. I don't think you can find 10 million that would sign the paper that says vending machines with fully loaded machine guns in the middle school hallways because shall not be infringed means no restrictions. I don't think you're going to find 10 million people that will sign that document, but that is what shall not be infringed says. But that's not the application for the vast majority of gun owners. And if we were having that conversation, I think there'd be a lot less talk about gun control in America because you wouldn't be able to paint gun owners as all irresponsible, like, hey, if somebody's going to die, that's okay, shall not be infringed. The founding fathers thought this through. That's not an answer.
Totally agree with that. And I think that it's honestly, it's sort of cheap traffic. So for a gun content creator or a shock jock style radio host to get up and say those things, that's the quickest path to some inflammatory following, like, because it sounds like something I can get behind. I'm never going to give this up. My cold dead hands, if you don't like it, suck on this, all that kind of language. But in the end, our last episode with Randy Meehan was kind of an example. It's not even, we can't even really get to the discussions that we need to have because the two sides on the edges are. You've ever been in a room where there's two guys talking so loud that the 4 or 5 other groups of people can't even have a conversation? That's kind of happening in our industry. So it's and then on top of that, from the sales aspect, and that's what I wanted to get into with the I don't remember the ammunition manufacturer
Phoenix
that you debated.
I believe.
I mean, I don't know if that's that guy's deeply held, like he really cares that much about the election, or if he just realized, if I put this up here, all these people who are salty are going to know what Phoenix ammunition is and come at least look at my website because of this gimmick that I'm putting on, and then they may buy some ammo. So, but I don't think that that's really healthy for growing a base of people who have a genuine understanding and a genuine passion for the Second Amendment.
It's not. And it's unfortunate because, a little over a year ago, that kid was sitting on a panel next to me with like 15 people at SHOT Show talking about diversity and inclusion in the gun community. And what's interesting is and if people watch I'll use air quotes, debate, he's like walking that back now. He's like, well, we were only talking about like colors of people. We weren't talking about ideas. There's only one idea when it comes to gun rights, and that idea is shut up your friend. It's like, come on, kid. Like, it's just, and again, fall on your sword, right? Like in a time when like Winchester ammunition and Hornady and Federal can't keep ammo on the shelves, can't even keep ammo to the shelves. Like it disappears on the way, like from the warehouse, people are buying it before it gets into stock.
So weird.
For an ammo company to be like, yeah, we're taking a big stand. We're not going to sell ammo to anybody that didn't, that voted for Biden or whatever. And it's like, it's such a marketing play. I don't know which is worse. Like if he believes that believes the line he's going down, or if it's just a marketing play. It's almost better if it's just a marketing play.
Right.
Right. Because it's like, you can't really sit and Maj Touré is kind of caught in the middle of it. Honestly, he hosted that panel and had him up there, and Phoenix Ammunition gives Black Guns Matter a lot of free ammo to support their events. And now Maj is sort of caught in the, wanting to support his friend who he believes is going to eventually mature a little bit, I think, and come around. That's my guess. And at the same time, he literally just I think he undermines the credibility of a diversity panel with a guy who says, no, the diversity was only about skin color. It wasn't about ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, that's not how diversity works. But I'm sure money will, right? I'm sure money will change his mind one way or the other. He'll either stop because he's not making enough, or...
Remember, that to me is where the gun community is failing, right? We've done a really good job of, the whole time I've been around the community, 25 years in, officially and longer than that as a gun owner, we've done a really good job with women, right? Like let's bring women in and put women on this and women's competition and women instructors and female gun classes and pink holsters. We've done a great job of being inclusive with women. We've done a great job of being inclusive racially for the most part, at least superficial diversity, and trying to make it clear that we're not anti any race. As far as the gun industry as a whole, I think we've even done a good good job when it comes to lifestyle issues, LGBTQ stuff, right? Like we've got some amazing groups and organizations. We've got spokespeople. We've got a very clear shunning. If you're not okay with this, something's wrong with you, which I think is pretty much what mainstream America's done. But where we've failed is thought diversity. We've failed with this idea that you can't have differing opinions about guns or even political ideologies. We're still very tied to the religious conservative right. I mean, I think the idea that there was a woman who was celebrated in the gun community and ended up as like a bit part contributor on Fox News because she banned Muslims from her range, right? It's hard to Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership have been around forever. Yehuda Rima, or the Pew Pew Jews, been around forever. But if you try to be like a Muslim gun owner or even an atheist or agnostic gun owner, you don't get a line. And how many gun events start with a Christian prayer, right? And it's freedom of speech. Okay, but you're also alienating people, right? And even the idea of God-given rights, which God? Help me out here. Which God gave us those rights? And what if my God and your God don't get along, or your religion doesn't like my religion? Do I get the rights? So we have to think about some of the vernacular we use, the assumption that the left is trying to take our guns or liberals are trying to take our guns. You guys had Randy Mian on here, and obviously not all liberals are trying to take our guns, right? I'm a moderate independent. I am socially liberal. I am fiscally conservative. I want a strong defense. I want strong borders. I want public school education. I want people to be able to smoke whatever drug they want and sleep with whoever they want. And I also want guns, right? So it's a very libertarian, moderate position. In politically independent, but I get a lot of that, you must have voted for Biden just because I pointed out that Trump was an embarrassment to our country, and the Republicans actually want to control your life and aren't all about freedom when it comes to schools and churches and marriages and drugs. And let's not just wave a patriotic flag over one group. Everybody's got their freedoms, everybody's got their hangups, and that's okay. Let's talk about it.
Well, you're not alone, Rob. I'm in the same boat. If I talk to a conservative and talk about what I believe in, I'm a liberal, and it goes the other way. You get thrown into a bucket somehow.
And that's the problem. So that's what I think we need to get rid of. And that's what the conversation, the only reason Maj asked me to do that debate, the reason that I engaged it, and you can watch it, it's like an hour long, a little over an hour long. That was supposed to have been 30 minutes. And God bless him. I think Maj was really trying to kind of help that be not as lopsided as it started out. And after about 45 minutes or 50 minutes, I was just kind of like, look, man. And I just sort of started talking to him like, you got to get over this. You got to mature. You got to stop being sophomoric. You got to stop alienating people. If you want to be an advocate, he kind of admits in that show, he kind of admits that it was really a marketing play. And I was like, good, that's cool. If it's just a marketing play, awesome. He said at one point, I don't educate people. And I'm like, you're right. I do that. That's literally my job. And I think all advocates need to be educators. And maybe you're just not, don't put the advocate hat on. If you don't put the advocate hat on, I don't care what your private business does. You can say you only want to sell to agnostic, Wiccan, black people who they are. I don't care. Good. You're going to have 7 customers. It's going to be awesome. Right. So do that. Whatever. I don't care about private businesses controlling who their customers are. Go for it. But don't wear the gun advocate hat and act like you're doing the gun community any favors by pushing people away.
one of the things that makes it an uphill battle for your perspective, though, is I don't think that generally speaking is how human beings are wired. Like with the politics that we're fed are designed to push our tribal buttons, and it's so much easier to say, and I saw this with a lot of my close friends. I had some close friends who were so libertarian leaning, thoughtful, saw through the system and the facade with the news media and really weren't pigeonholed up until this last election. And something about the language was like, screw you, I'll go down with a fight. And they really internalized and believe that, because I run into them and they're like deflated and they're like, well, this is the end of America and the end of my life. Like, this may be the last time I see you. And I'm like, clearly this wasn't all a joke for you, because you still think the world is going to end. Instead of going out and just living your life and seeing what difference you can make in the real world, you really believe that this is the end of the chapter for America. And if you have that mindset, it might very well be.
That's the problem right there. I think that's and it's this weird victim mentality to me. That's the way I look at it. Like, they are doing that, they're doing, they,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, they're us, bro. Like, we all vote, like, we're all on the internet. Like, they are us. Like, you can't, the person who thinks we all need healthcare isn't trying to destroy America. Like, you got to get past that. And the fact that you think abortion is killing babies doesn't mean you want to end freedom. Right. And we just have to so let's talk about it. Right. Let's have a conversation about that, as opposed to, you're a baby killer and you don't care about humans. It's maddening. Right. So I do think that there's a huge underlying philosophical problem with identity politics that reinforces this idea that people need a narrative. And there's articles, there's all kinds of things you can find about this whole, it's like confirmation bias on crack when it comes to a political narrative that you will just ignore and disavow data that doesn't fit your paradigm if your paradigm is tied to your life and your ethos and your religion. It comes down to faith, right? Like, if you have faith that Nancy Pelosi's probably an alien that eats babies, that can you prove she's not?
Yeah. and now we live in a world where I can know that your socks are uncomfortable and I can market you premium socks just because you Googled you have a chafing on a certain side of your foot. And that's a great marketing tool. But what it's also doing is, if you have indicated that you think Nancy Pelosi is an alien, which, by the way, I had a discussion in a gun group where a guy made the argument that Joe Biden was both a lizard person and a robot in the same comment thread. Like, he was legitimately arguing with me. I'm like, look, bro, I'll even let you pick. Like, if he's a lizard man, like, make your arguments that he's a lizard man, because the next thing out of your mouth was that they had a programming error, and that's why he stuttered over a certain line of speech, because it didn't load all of the right data, and the 5G hasn't been implemented thoroughly enough to keep the robot at all the campaign events saying the right things. And this guy really thought that was real.
Dang, robot lizards.
But the thing is, you can feed that more so than in the past, because you can confirm that bias several times a day and never be fed anything, because now we have this a la carte access to information. So we, even less than in the past, we can shield ourselves to any kind of thing that disagrees with us. And now we got a whole army of friends that are going to help us shout down anything that we disagree with. And it really just becomes almost like this animalistic thing that we're doing for sport. And we've lost all sense of this is an actual debate that we make decisions on.
What makes it even worse is when those opinions can be reinforced by some enigmatic entity that somehow is the I don't know, the underlying reason that you feel that way. I don't remember the gentleman's name from Phoenix, but he kept referencing some lady he talked to on the phone as if that lady was every person. Yeah, one instance. Right. It's I watched the entire thing, Rob. I was with you the whole time on your frustration. But yeah, I mean, that was it. And then the instance that Eli's talking about is similar things. I mean, all of a sudden you can affirm what you believe because you heard a story or you saw a story or you heard someone on TV talking about it. Now everybody feels that way. I've got to be on edge.
And it's not that everybody that supported Trump thinks Biden's a lizard robot, right? Like, we get that. You're saying that, Eli. But that's an extreme example. But when you have like Skeptic magazine devoting an entire set of features, what's an issue? Yeah, the Skeptic magazine devotes an entire issue to the QAnon rumors. I will say, like, for me, the QAnon, I didn't realize it was real, to be fair. Like, I thought it was a joke, right? Like, like the Boogaloo movement, everybody was like, just a joke. And I knew that. I lived through the militia world in the 80s and the 90s that gave us Timothy McVeigh. I knew that there were people taking that seriously, and that was a problem, right? Like, hey guys, you may be contributing to the next Timothy McVeigh if you support this whole thing, right? And there were a lot of people who just really didn't ever conceive. They've been in the industry for 5-10 years. They've never been to like an old school gun show where the Turner Diaries is being sold openly, right? So they have no idea that this was real, that there were really 20-somethings out there wearing Hawaiian shirts thinking they were getting ready for a war, and without context, and so they were spreading as major companies were getting on board with this cool meme trend. And obviously now you don't see that very often. Now people who are doing that now, they're the ones I'm worried about, right? Because after last summer, all of a sudden people started backing slowly away from the Boogaloo movement. Now, what you didn't see was people condemning it, because again, that ostracizes your audience for a lot of these companies and these organizations. So you don't see a lot of Hawaiian shirt themes this time or this year like you did this time last year. If you think back to the pictures you saw at the Virginia rally and stuff like that, people realize, I don't want to be associated with that, right? We did a joint statement with liberal gun owners, NASGW, several other organizations, Guns for Everyone, disavowing the violence and the rioting at the Capitol on January 6th through 2AO.org, where we brought a bunch of organizations together to say, this isn't the gun community. Because first of all, for the gun community, there would have been guns. Second of all, this is the gun community doesn't support this. That's a fair point. Right? And it's also not lizard people necessarily, but I can empathize. Rich Brown, Coffee with Rich. Rich Brown is Mike Seeklander's partner at American Warrior Society. We did a morning coffee chat in January, maybe 2 weeks after the January 6th event, so mid-January. He made an amazing point about the woman who got killed and the fact that she spent, 12, 14 years as an enlisted airman in the Air Force. When you take the oath, and my oath was an officer's oath, Rich's oath was an officer's oath, and we don't swear allegiance to the officers above us or the president. We swear allegiance to the protect and defend the Constitution. And the enlisted oath includes following lawful orders given to us by the officers put in our command and the president, the commander-in-chief. This woman thought she was following an order, right? In her mind, her worldview, her narrative was, go stop those people from stealing America from us. And I am your commander-in-chief saying this, right? So it sort of makes sense. Like, some of the stuff that doesn't make sense to a lot of us makes sense if you put yourself in that mindset. So now I'm thinking, wait a minute, if you really believe Joe Biden is a lizard robot, what are you willing to do? Like, I'm a little worried now. What else? When I see people repeating this narrative, I've seen gun rights advocates who I've been collaborated with for years and been known for decades say things like, well, have you ever noticed that McDonald's are all near an interstate exit or within a few miles of an abortion clinic? Why do you think that is, Rob? Oh my gosh. And it's like, I don't know that to be true. And I have Well, if you read the ingredients, you'll find out that there's an enzyme.
I didn't see that coming.
That's exactly where I was going with it.
I didn't.
Chicken
It's
McNuggets
cheaper.
question mark. There he
It's
is.
cheaper that way.
Like as if they're taking
But how can you, my 5 years,
My
five
God.
That's terrible.
I
how
mean,
can you possibly take anything that seriously, right? Like you believe that, and now I'm supposed to like take your advice on the new SIG is awesome. Like I don't think you should be allowed in public alone.
right.
But their fries are still good.
But you wouldn't take the right away to be in public.
Right. So no, they can be alone. But
Right.
man, I don't think you should. It's a difference between should versus could, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. So it's the thing about Trump was, and I want to criticize him a little bit. I don't typically do that. It doesn't make me pro anything else because I say things that it doesn't take a million people to hear what he says and act upon it. It takes one person to act because they think that they're hearing from the president of the United States that they need to go take action, and they get to decide what that action is. It could be with a gun or it could be with a truck full of explosives in front of a federal building. It's, their choice, the dealer's choice in that matter. So that's why it's important that our leaders shouldn't dog whistle. I believe that's the term used correctly. Am I right on that, guys? Help me.
it's tough. So anyway, I mean, this is a segue from what does 2AO do, but you got to understand my ethos, like my mentality, if you understand the messaging, because it is nuanced, right? It's I'm trying to combat, like on Earth, I'm trying to combat a lack of objectivity, right? A lack of principle over preference, a lack of nuanced dialogue versus talking points, a lack of actual debate where I say something and you respond to it versus talking to my audience and ignoring the person I'm supposed to actually be influencing, right? The person I'm trying. So when people say things like, shall not be infringed is the beginning and the end of every gun control conversation, you're literally, it's impossible that you believe you're actually going to influence. I don't understand the lack of objectivity to think that's going to influence somebody who doesn't already believe in gun rights, So I got to have a conversation with someone who doesn't believe in gun rights to protect gun rights. That's what makes me an advocate and not an entertainer on the internet,
And it's honestly easier to be the entertainer. It's simpler. The money is easier, and it makes
less responsibility.
Yeah. I made the joke when Randy came on because of that MO. I said, I've never had a liberal on my show, which is true. I said, so based on what I've seen, I invite you on, but then I shout over you and insult you and just say what my audience wants to hear so they can see me. It's like bringing in another member of the tribe and he's got his hands tied and we're just ridiculing him from being different than us. And that's kind of what we appreciate about you and what makes you a friend of the show is that you're doing a little bit more than that.
Oh, thanks, man. Now, you guys have been like super supportive, and I see who, I'm not the only guy you're having on the show that isn't kind of towing the party line, right? And I think that's really important. Walk the Talk America is something that can be controversial. Randy with LGO we've mentioned a couple of times. Like these things, it's so important that the gun shop guys, right? Like your everyday gun guys, your friends in the gun business, are friends with and supporting at least the idea that we should talk about these things. I don't expect any of you to, I don't even agree with myself 100% of the time, right? Like people quote me, like, remember in 1997 when you were on that TV show and you said the double action third gen Smiths were great? I'm like, well, they were in 1997, man.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's funny that you say that because you were listing off. You said, well, I believe in this. And I was like, yeah, that's a good libertarian position. You described yourself as a libertarian. Then you said, I really like public schools. And I was like, you're dead to me. That's my one issue. You're not a libertarian. So even though I'm resistant, I'm like this little jolt of like, well, now we got to debate.
Libertarians are the only political group I know of that try to out-libertarian each other.
Yeah, for sure.
to be more, but my kids. So while I say that, like, I do believe that there should be some level of organization to provided education to, and I don't think it's the one we have now by any stretch, but I do believe in that theory and that ethos of promoting education and learning and lifelong learning, really, not just the indoctrination of kids, right? My kid's in an illegal, unregulated private school situation with a teacher that took a sabbatical, and she just celebrated her 6 months since we started the school in September without missing a day, and none of the families involved have had an outbreak of corona or anything else, and she's gone to school all year while the public school can't figure out how to get out of its own way. So by no means is it the follow the government line kind of a thing, but yeah, do I think promoting education? Absolutely.
More nuance. Well, I feel like we could do this all day, but we have a lot of guns to sell, and we should probably get back to doing it. So, Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I know that your influence will be the result of at least one 3D printer purchase, probably many more just from this show. So, well, thank you so much. Is there?
You can see kind of what kind of progress this thing has made. This is the Shover drive, so I can.
So quality is not a concern.
No, quantity though.
Right, like so you can see here. Like hopefully you can see a little bit better now.
Oh, that's much better.
Oh yeah.
It kind of looks like a mix between a gun and a cliff.
Oh yeah, right there. Yeah.
So that bottom part is that support, and that'll theoretically just rip right out, and then I'll sand it and file it a little bit, and I'll have myself a real cool Glock 17 frame, and then I'll drop some Riptide rails in it and put Glock parts on it, and I'll have a gun. And that one is just straight off the press, so to speak, from Free Men Don't Ask. And then I've been messing around with some contouring to create like a little bit of a palm swell with contouring for the finger grooves that sort of make this a little bit more CZ-like instead of that blocky thing. So this is actually that and this are going to somehow meet, and this is going to be my competition pistol for the Gunmakers match. So so there's some personal stuff going on, the things I want to give to the community. I'm working on a wedge for a crossbreed holster design that'll tuck the appendix carry holster back a little bit to support my Shield magazine inspired full length grip carry. So there's just all kinds of stuff going on with the printing. When you get going, join the Are We Cool Yet group, and follow what I'm doing. By no means, I get it. Like now I'm the expert because I'm like the old guy that people have been watching on TV and magazines. I've been doing it for 2 months, like 7 weeks, 9 weeks now. So there are so many people out there that know so much more than I do. But I think sometimes as the student, it is valuable to ask the guy that's only 2 months ahead of you, right? Not the guy that's been doing it for 4 years so far out, right?
Yeah.
So I hope that I'm bringing is valuable, and the watch along on YouTube or wherever my social media, and just sort of see that path, because I'm bouncing off the walls a little bit to get it right,
Well, we love it. It's fun to follow along, and even if we don't do a whole other show on it, if you're down, we'd love to have you pop in, just show us what you've been printing, show us what you're working on, help keep our listeners cognizant of the Gunmakers match coming up in June. Plug for one last time before we sign off, all of the ways that people can find your content and all of the things that you're working on.
2AO.org for the gun rights stuff, gunrights.info for what I think are well thought out and sometimes nuanced position statements on gun law and other issues, ICEtraining.us, or intuitiveshooting.com for the classes. I actually do get out and teach classes still somewhat frequently, so I go out there. Personaldefensenetwork.com is the place. If you just want to talk about home defense tactics, the gear for home defense, holsters, guns, not just me, but a team of contributors, personaldefensenetwork.com is the place to go for all that. And that's 16 years, we're in our 16th year of content production there. 100 DVDs we produced, and then now we're over a decade into the online content production. Really, those are the places. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at PincusRob, PINCUSROB. And then also on Facebook with all the companies, all the organizations I've mentioned, as well as Rob Pincus, are on YouTube and Facebook.
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure, and please don't be a stranger. We appreciate all of your generous time today. Thank you very much, Rob Pincus. I wasn't joking.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
That's the
always
end of the show. You got one of those sports games things like you wear and it just goes into your boot or something?
Previous episodes and more available at gunshopshow.com.